Well, welcome to Loose Ends, where we seek to tie up loose ends from our Sunday sermons and think about how Scripture applies to and transforms our lives. Today we're going to be having a special episode where we get to think about fatherhood and what it means really to be Christian dads. I'm Robert Bood, Maturity Pastor here at MBM, and I'm with our very own Ray Galea and Membership Pastor Mark Boyley. Guys, thanks for joining us. How are you going?
Ooh,
pleasure.
Fantastic.
Great to have you here. Well, we have been working through a series in 1 Timothy, thinking about what it looks like to be God's family. And this week wasn't a talk in 1 Timothy, but really it highlighted the fact that as we are a family, we have God as our Father, and we are His children adopted in Christ. Now, at this point, we usually ask the preacher, if we had another 5 minutes or so, what would we have loved to be able to elaborate on? Now, since I was the preacher, I think I possibly stole those 5 minutes in the talk anyway, but if I had another 5 minutes, I would have loved to be able to just dig into a bit more in detail about what God's fatherly care actually looks like in the day-to-day things. So how does He actually care for us? And I think specifically what we see is that one of the chief ways that God does express His fatherly care for us is through His children, the church. And so in very practical ways, often what we do with that when we face a difficult scenario is we pray and we kind of expect to see some kind of miracle happen in front of us, rather than just turning to the phone, calling up one of our brothers and sisters and asking for some practical kind of care, where God has given us this church body with the many various gifts and abilities to serve one another, where we see His hands and feet at work among us. And so just getting into detail about some more of those particular scenarios where we've seen God's fatherly care play itself out. Now, Mark, you're a membership pastor, and so you would have seen and been really one of the people active in seeing this at work in our community. Could you give some ways where you've seen this fatherly care expressed through our church?
Yeah, look, it does happen in lots and lots of ways, and it is one of the pleasures of my job, is I get to see that and witness what people are doing for each other. We can always do it more, but it is very exciting to hear the stories. For example, just yesterday I heard that Janita Jones had received just so much encouragement on the first anniversary since her husband Ross died. And she was happy for me to say this to you. She'd received like 4 bunches of flowers and messages, and her Connect group and her craft group and all these other friends had expressed their love and care a year on. She said, I didn't think anybody would even remember. So I think that sort of thing is brilliant, just to see that happening. Yeah. And often very spontaneous, very hidden. But as we saw in 1 Timothy, or about to see, good works of people do follow behind, and eventually they get shown for what they are.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that that I would have loved to be able to pick up in the talk as well is often when we think about God's fatherly care and when He tells us not to worry, often we can, in our particular scenario, we can view our scenario as bad from our point of view. And that's because we can't see the bigger picture, or even the whole picture that God is seeing and what He might be working out in our lives as we travel through this scenario that may feel bad, not what we expected, not being grown in the way we wanted to be, but being able to see what God is doing on the bigger picture to us, even through us, to bless others and in other people's lives at the same time, is an aspect of seeing that fatherly care play its way out in the longer term and what God might be doing through that. So so many complex things as we think about God's fatherly care for us.
Well, Hebrews 12, that's exactly right. That consider hardship as discipline, and it's a mark of the Father's love for you. And, fathers by definition give life, care for that life, and have responsibility over that life. I remember how Tony Payne summarised fatherhood, what the nature of father in the Bible. And part of that actually is urging them, shaping them to become the best they can be. And God in His providence uses hardship. Right now, He's lovingly disciplining us all.
Yeah.
Not punishing us, but disciplining us all to become more like His Son.
And it's okay for that to be a mystery. We don't have to say...
And not pleasant.
We don't have to say, we'll work out what God's doing here in this situation, because sometimes we won't. at the moment at the Sudanese congregation of Oakhurst Anglican, with a whole bunch of families, whole extended households with COVID, and somebody died already, you think, well, what's going on? What is going on? And we don't know exactly how that's going to fit into the plans of God. We trust him as our Father at that point. And we can see that churches all over Sydney have got in touch and helped financially, including our own. But it's going to be hard to see the mystery of God in these things. We just trust him as our Father.
Yeah. Well, let's move to fatherhood from our point of view. There's not heaps to say in the New Testament, detail specific things to fathers. There's a few key things which are very important, but loads to say across the Bible in general. Mark, I'd love to start with you. You were recently going to run an event for dads called I'm a Dad, Get Me Out of Here, which didn't get to happen. Tell us about what that was about and what were you hoping to do there?
Yeah, look, the reason why we didn't run it is I couldn't quite bring myself to turning that into a Zoom call. I felt like we need to get dads at church around fire pits, around food, just talking to each other. And I mean, the nature of fatherhood is really the nature of the Christian life. You're repenting and you're putting your faith in Christ day by day. You're pushing back on the things of this world, and you're pushing forward, fixing your eyes upon Jesus. And so I reckon it'd be great just to get the guys in a room, and I'm still hoping to do this, whenever we can, and hear from each other how we do that. I feel like as far as pushing back against the world, there's this constant kind of a gravitational pull dragging us dads towards the couch with the beer and the remote, or the shed or the garage or the work, or, back to the warehouse or whatever it is. There's just all these different pulls which take us away from our families. And we've got to fight gravity at that point. And I just love to hear from other guys how they do that, and learn from each other on that. And as far as fixing our eyes on Jesus and growing in our trust day by day, I think it'd be good to hear how people do that. How do we step towards our wives and our kids? How do we make time for that? What kind of things work as far as building the relationship with your kids? That's why I wanted to run that event.
So really, it's just to get guys together. One of the key aspects of learning how to do fatherhood is hearing from each other and sharing that wisdom and what's worked and what are you struggling with, and being honest and open with each other.
Yeah, hopefully next year we'll do it.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that, getting together with some of the other dads. Ray, I'll flick to you. I'm sure over the years you've seen many expressions, examples, good and bad, on fathering. What have been some of the most important lessons that you've learned on being a dad and raising children in the faith?
You've got to build a soil of love on which then you can discipline. So you try to discipline without love. And so when James, my firstborn, was 5 years old, I realized we weren't naturally connected. And so somewhere someone said, spend some time one-on-one with your kids. So from that moment on, each of my kids had one-on-one time with me every week. And it was very rare that it broke. And it was important for them to see that I said no to the church for them. But they also on occasion needed to be told I was going to say no to them when a crisis happened, so that they didn't think they were the center of the universe. And so they're the things they remember more than anything when I look back. Even now, catching up one-on-one is still what they like to do. And they're, well, I won't say how old they are, but they're well and truly adults.
Hey, Ray,
and then with
on that, when your kids were that age and you were having that one-on-one time with them, I was an MTS worker.
Yeah.
So I'd be in your home. And I remember one time we were trying to organise something. I'm saying, Ray, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And I'm working through this list of stuff. And one of your kids came to the door and said, but Daddy, it's our time. And kind of looked at me almost with this filthy look like, why are you taking me away from my daddy? It was brilliant. And I had to rightly step back, repent and say, those things can be organised later. Yeah. And you went off and spent time with
memory.
them. It made an impression on me too.
Yeah. And it wasn't always easy, so you have fun. So, and the rule was they could do whatever they want as long as it didn't cost money and wasn't in front of the TV. And so we worked to it. I mean, like with my daughter, there was a season where we'd go and have a different milkshake. So I mean, I wasn't there was no money spent, but not a lot. With James, it was often bird watching, and I'd drive into a place and we'd talk and we think the things of God. But just having fun, just enjoying each other's company. When one of my girls was going through a really difficult time, and it was just really hard to make that happen, I'd stand outside of shops and I'd just take her to the shops, and then I said, "But I want 20 minutes with it where we can chat about things in that." So I'm building relationship all the time, trying to know that they matter. It was interesting. The girls would often had a season of what's my favorite color, who's my best friend, and they wanted me to know their world and tested me on it, and that was part of it. But really, God talk being natural. So there was the formal Bible reading time, and
Ray, what did that look like at home for you?
when they were younger, it was tended to be more one-to-one. But as they got older, it was around the table, and it was messy, and you just had to live with the mess of it and not try too hard, and don't be too preachy, and try to find one thing that the passage speaks to you about or you find difficult. Just a couple of simple questions, but stay away from sermonizing. Especially with ministers' kids, they're hearing the old man preach here, there, and everywhere. So. But what I think is more important, if you did that but didn't do the natural God talk, then that was I would interface with TV things. That is a lie, I would sometimes say, and I would just kind of speak to the TV. We're all watching Experience, or getting them to just reflect on thinking theologically about the world, and. My daughter remembers me saying, we're all going to die like a dog, like everybody else. Oh, sorry. Whenever one of my daughters was impressed by some famous person, I said, "Yep, but don't remember, darling, they'll die like a dog, like everyone else." So what you need to do is get your life right with God. Now, I'm sure there were imperfect things, but just being natural about God talk, I think, as they exited the car and I dropped them off at school on occasions. Have a great day, have a happy day, but most importantly, have a holy day. Just little idiosyncrasies that come and stuff I'd often steal from somebody else. I'm not an original person. Yeah, and then of course apologising, and just when I've overreacted, when like I've had to do with my staff. You've all been on the receiving end of my apologies, and just unqualified saying when I did it, I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I was wrong. And asking them how they felt about that when I might have lost my temper here, there, and they need to know that I'm under my Father in heaven, who both wants me to be a good father, but at the same time, I need to actually own my sin. That is just some things. Yeah,
Very helpful.
I think if I could add to that, having family time. So we did the one-on-one time thing as well. I think we probably got that off the Galeas. So one-on-one with each kid. But we did a lot of stuff as a family and still do. Really memorable stuff. When the kids are young and they just seem to be stuck on their devices all the time, camping trips are brilliant for that because the batteries run flat and you're out of Wi-Fi, right? So, we did this long trip to Central Australia, camping along the way, and the kids were, device-free basically for weeks. For 3 weeks, and we had all that time as a family to do other things. We bought board games, and they cost a lot of money, but they're so good for actually, family time together. At the moment, our family is addicted to watching Survivor. Sorry, forgive us, but it's the time in the week where we, kind of get together as a family, and that's good fun. We're playing darts out in the backyard. We had a fire pit the other week, and sat around that and had dinner out there. So it's just finding stuff that you enjoy doing together so that you're friends and not just, inhabiting the same house. That makes a huge difference. And that gives you the context for the God talk, for the, weekly sit down, open the Bible. Just stopping and praying with a kid when they're nervous, when they're about to go off to school, or while you're in the car and they're about to, go to work or whatever it is. Just those natural opportunities to stop and pray. But when it happens within the context of a good relationship, that really helps.
And also having being a family that models inclusivity, so that I really thank God for my extended family. Whenever we have Christmas dues, and there's always 20% of extras. Someone's bringing someone, and I think even that was modeling. So it's not what you say. Having people in your house stay in your house. That was really important as well.
Especially for kids at birthdays and Christmases, not to see that it's all about them. It's actually about blessing others. And
that's right. Our Christmas was like that. We'd have an old lady that Mum had connected with, and a few years later we'd be at her funeral, but we'd enjoyed those Christmases together. It was brilliant. And having an open house, and even when my memory of growing up was my scout group, my parents were always involved. They were on the parents committee or whatever. My school, I'd be up there with my friends while they were doing the working bee on a Saturday. They were involved in our lives, and that was kind of key as well.
If you can, speak to the person who is maybe new in the faith or been around for a while and doesn't know how to do the God talk, feels like they've just let the ball drop for the last few years, youngish kids. How do they take a step forward in this way?
One thing is, obviously we're not together, so the online ministry becomes important. So there's not a bad place to start. There are questions at the end of the talk. There's just being able to take those questions into the life of the family, saying, I'm not very good at this, guys, but, I want to start somewhere. Is not a bad place to start. So, a couple of weeks ago, I felt like I dropped the ball reading the Bible with Sandy. We're doing it individually, not together. But after Dan's talk, we got onto John Piper's Everyday app and reread it together and pray. And so, just start from the actual preached word that you're hearing at church. That's one thing. Yeah.
Is there a place to confess to the family before them, guys, I've really dropped this ball? And I want to work at moving towards this, and so I need your help, and we want to do it together. And really, just in humility, come before them and start from scratch.
Starting with God, that's the first place to start. So confess it to God, pray about it, just sit in prayer with that for a while, and just see what ideas God gives you, and then confess to your family and try and take some action.
And get tips from other people, That's what a healthy conversation to have with other guys, and other parents
in growth groups and in those kind of contexts.
How do you do it? Oh, you don't do it either. Okay, well, let's maybe make a pact that this week we'll do it twice, or something. Just some step forward.
Yeah, and, I go riding with a Christian mate from another church, and often our rides are very slow, but often involve how
good conversation.
How are you doing this and this with your kids, and just sharing life with each other. That's a good way to do it.
And can I say, you've got young kids with Hazel and Micah.
Yep.
Mark's got kids who are older teenagers and moving into adulthood and in adulthood. I mean, I've got grandkids, so I'm starting all over again, but from a different perspective. So, and actually the issues change, and you have to constantly be flexible. The same thing generally doesn't work right through, except the time together. That was the one thing that remained true. But a lot of the stuff actually just get morphing into different contexts. So, if it doesn't work, think of something else.
I read a really helpful book called Family Worship. Very small book. Posted on our Facebook groups a while back. And the big thing for him was be regular in whatever you do. Just try to keep doing it. It'll fail days after days after days, but don't give up. Just keep working at it. And that really encouraged us just to do something. Each night we get together, we get a little kids' Bible. The kids, both of them know which one is the kids' Bible. We get it open. Sometimes it's an absolute mess. Micah's screaming, Hazel's screaming. Hardly anything gets done, but we try to just get into it, pray together. So they know this is the thing that we do as a family. We hear from God. And
Sandy has that little prayer dice thing that she, a lot of the parents have now, where there's a different point. You throw the dice, which sounds bad, I know, but and then it falls on some topic you can pray. So the kids love it. They throw it. I do it with our grandkids, and maybe praying for you're praying for this person or that thing.
Yeah.
And it just keeps it, and it keeps trying to do some variety in it as well.
If you can speak to the dad who's got an older teen, either boy or girl, who's just in that place of wanting to spread their wings and fly their own way, struggling to, when they speak in, the kid doesn't want to hear it, will hear some things, not others. Speak to that parent, that dad who's just really in that place.
Yeah, look, part of that is you've got to have people aside from yourself involved in their life. So I think it was Steve Bidoff in his book Raising Boys that points that out, that you've got to actually have good peers and older men. So whether that's youth leaders at church, people that family, friends, or whatever it is, you get other people involved as well and make it a team thing. It's not just you.
Once I can't stress how important that is. That it takes, they say it takes a
community to raise a child and a Christian community to raise a disciple.
For some reason, I want to say village. Why do I want to say village?
Yeah, village.
That's what I'm saying. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a community and the community of God to raise a child of God. And so the nuclear family is very unusual in the history of the world. So the church family is there to actually help bring up that child. That's why bringing your kids to youth and children's ministry is so vital. And it's not a critique on parents, and their job is to work alongside parents in discipling kids. That's their explicit vision statement, to work alongside parents. So they don't see they get to be with the kids an hour a week. Parents get to be with the kids all the time. So there is support structure to that. But they especially when your kids are teenagers, they need someone who's just a little bit older, who is loving and modeling Jesus, speaking into their life and leading them in the right direction. And I still can't grasp how parents are not intentional, because it's inconvenient. I've got to get out of my way and drive my kids to Friday. Well, we've all done that, and admittedly, I did have the building next to me, so I know it's a little bit. But we had guys at Southwest who travel 30 minutes every Friday to bring their kids to youth, every Friday for 6 years, and are now bearing the fruit of that in their kids' lives. So, and you know what? Sometimes just the effort you make is the truth that you're revealing. God seeking first His kingdom and His righteousness. Yeah.
Can I say that works from the other point of view as well? So if you're somebody who's maybe a young adult, or somebody who's a little bit older, or doesn't have a family, or the family's grown up or whatever, can you get involved in somebody else's life? Is there a single mum that lives nearby, or that you know from church? Can you get involved in their life and be kind of an uncle to their kids, or somebody just to be in their garage with them and help make a billy cart or something like that? I'm showing my age, but a skateboard, whatever it is.
Or just to listen.
Billy cart. Oh, billy cart.
But I'm thinking of my nephew.
You know what a billy cart is, Rob?
These days,
You know
Mark,
what a billy cart
it's take them out for coffee. I mean, teenagers are drinking coffee from 12 years old.
Nah, get a project happening. So I remember my father doing that with our kids and sort of building something with them.
Yeah.
And they just treasured those things.
Yeah.
So it's just, how could you be involved in someone's life? What could you do? Could you have a family over? Whatever it is.
No, it's exactly what God says. A true religion is this: to be a father to the fatherless. Yeah. And that's what we can all invest in that. But one kind of thread that I heard coming through that is humility in many ways, to call others in to help and admit we don't have all the answers, but also a self-discipline. As the Christian life is about discipline and self-control, but taking on others to be responsible for also just involves a whole level of self-discipline as we work at this thing we don't really know how to do. But thankfully, and just as the talk was about this week, we have a Father in heaven who we know cares for each and every one of us as we walk along this together, and even our kids. I think I made a point of saying, teach your kids to trust their Father in heaven even more than us. And I think that's a really important thing. Guys, thanks so much. It's been really great trying to tie up some of these loose ends. As always, this is never the end of the conversation. So if you've got more questions about this, we'd love to hear your questions. Send them in to questions@mbm.org.au. And if we don't get to them in our podcast, we'd love to just get a response to you in any way we can. Look forward to that event coming up. I'm a dad. Get me out of here. Hopefully sometime in the future. Yeah. But as always, we say, until next week, stay deep in the Word, trusting God to keep transforming our lives for His glory. Have a great week.